Hi and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're going to start with doing a different project. So before we get onto the project, just quickly want to update you on a couple of items. So the first is, some of you may have seen that we had uploaded a video for the 2024 Experts Cup Rally. And then that video has disappeared. That was the last rally of the season, was run a few weeks ago. Yes, we did upload that video and then we have deleted it from the channel for the time being. Basically, we got a comment from somebody saying that we had used their content and some of their footage without permission. And that isn't what we understood. So basically with that person, we thought we had a long-term agreement. It was an agreement made some years ago that we would be able to use footage. And over time, here and there, we have used some footage and content from that particular person. And if memory serves me correctly, we actually helped that person to get their accreditation to be able to do what they do. So for some odd reason that permission has been revoked. So we had intended to re-edit and then re-upload the video, and sadly the drive that we had all of that footage on, and a great deal of other footage as well, has died. So that's a bit disappointing. We're going to have to see if we can get that drive recovered, but in the meantime that video will be on hold and we may upload it at a later stage. Now, in the last video that we had put up, I did say that we were working on a couple of other developments in the background, some pretty cool and exciting stuff. And so, yes, we have done that. We've been working on a digital display at this point to fit into a Subaru, and it uses the CAN stream from aftermarket ECUs. In this case, the Link ECU. We've got that up. We have built this and used this for our own purposes. However, we have had some comments along the way from people and customers and competitors asking about this sort of stuff. You could say loosely that it could be used as a digital dash, and so therefore we have got the prototypes up and running and tested those, and they are working mint, which is great. And in the near future we will do a separate video on it, and we are going to make this stuff available for purchase. So keep an eye out for that video and some more details on that in the future. Right-o, let's move on to the subject of today's video, the project. And sorry to disappoint you, for those that are Ford Escort lovers, the Mark II behind me here isn't going to feature in this video. It may feature in a future video. That's in for a bunch of works. However, it's not going to be a rally car. So we are going to talk about a rally car, and it is something different. So let's take a look. So this is a Subaru Liberty, and it is quite a late model. It is an 05 Liberty, so something very different. And as a big reveal, it has the Subaru 6-cylinder naturally aspirated boxer engine in it, known as the H6 or the EZ30 engine, depending which way you go with this. And we're going to turn one of these into a rally car. The story with this car is, it was originally bought and being run as a carnicross car, and then the customers decided that they want to rally this car. So they have already had a cage in it, a full tower-to-tower welding cage has been fitted in there, and it is by a very reputable builder. So it is a great solid cage, and that's kind of as far as it's got. So it's been gutted down to have that cage put in it, and our job is to put this back together and turn it into a rally car. It's going to be a bit of a collaboration between us and the owner. We will do some of the work and the owner will do the rest. Now, why the H6 engine and why this car? Well, effectively the customer already owned this car, so they decided that this would be the base that they would use for it. And the H6 engine, the 6-cylinder, is actually not a bad idea for rallying. In other parts of the world, particularly in New Zealand, it is quite popular to fit this engine into an Impreza. either naturally aspirated, turbocharged, and occasionally supercharged form as well. And the thinking behind it is that the engine, say naturally aspirated form, has no turbo lag, and it has a bit more torque in it, being a 6-cylinder, being a larger 3-litre engine, and also there is a bit more power to be gained out of it without needing to wind the boost up, effectively not having a turbo. So there are some definite advantages in there, and in the Imprezas they tend to go pretty well from what I have read and seen. However, the disadvantage, particularly in the Impreza, is the 6-cylinder engine is slightly longer, which obviously it's got an extra 2 cylinders on it, which means that you've got more weight hanging over the front wheels, further in front of the front axle. From a handling perspective, also being a little bit longer and a little bit taller, they don't fit quite so well into the Impreza. There is a bit of mucking around with the cooling system to get them to fit in there, and they are slightly heavier. However, in this car, which is what it was designed to fit in, there shouldn't be any dramas with that. So effectively, we're not going to fiddle with the engine at all. There's no real reason to pull it apart and do anything on the engine. What we are going to do though is fit some aftermarket engine management, so we can do away with some of the troublesome bits and pieces, things like airflow meters and whatnot, and we will run this. It does have drive-by-wire throttle, so e-throttle in there, and it has variable valve timing in it, which means from an ECU perspective, we are going to use a Link Extreme ECU in it, which can cope with multiple cylinders, the sequential injection of 6 cylinders plus. It can handle the variable valve timing and of course the e-throttle. And we will wire this one in because at this point in time there is no plug and play board available for it for these particular cars, and not surprising, not many of these are turned into motorsport machines. And yep, we will uprate the fuel system and everything else that goes along with it to make it into a reliable rally car for the customer. It is sporting the 6-speed manual in there, and this one has got an upgraded centre diff in it already. The customer has already done that. So a lot of the groundwork or the foundations have been laid in the car. We just need to get it ready to gravel rally and do some finessing on it. Progress is being made. So not very exciting to watch, so I haven't filmed a lot of it. Laying out wiring loom and putting it back in the car is time consuming, however not very exciting to sit there and watch. It is a fairly tricky job in some cars, and this car there's a few places where it's not the easiest. The factory stuff for the most part's not too bad. However, when we get inside the car, you can see probably not that clearly there, I don't think. You might just be able to see right down the back there, there's an open hole there, the grommet. That is around the cage. Let's see, we'll move the wiring and show you. See, so these are the factory grommets, and wiring runs through to the wheel arches or the inside of the fenders on both sides of the car. It doesn't carry, well, I say it doesn't carry critical stuff. That one carries ABS wiring, but in terms of running the engine, it's not that critical. However, because of the way the cage is designed and put in the car, makes it very difficult to get it in. I'm not sure if it's going to show that well on the camera there, but far on the left side there you can see the wiring loom. We've really had to work hard to get the rubber grommet into the inner arch there around it. Also, if you can see some black there, we've sealed up where the cage goes through to the strut towers there and the firewall to make that fireproof and fuel-proof. However, it's also there to try and keep all the mud and muddy water and dirt out that might come in the car, and hence why we're putting all the rubber grommets back in their spots, and we tend to seal those in where we can. There's still a few holes there. That one's where the aircon and heater came through. We will block that off at a later stage, put a grommet in there or make a plate up to go over that, and lay it all out and get all this mess here. A lot of this goes into the fuse box, so you've got to work all that out, how we're going to get that all mounted, because the factory positions for all that stuff has all been removed now with the cage sitting in there, and it can make it a little bit tricky to get everything in and out. Another day and more wiring. Now, why am I showing you this loom? I know it's a picture we showed on a few videos previously. Well, this is the rear section of the car. The front section went in without too much grief, and I thought it might be the same with the rear. However, not so lucky. So this is the rear loom. It has been chopped off on both sides for some reason, which now means we've got to splice that wiring back together and work out what's going on in there. Right, so in this mess I think I have found the cut-off ends in a couple of places. I'm actually unwrapping all of the tape and convoluted tube, etc. off of the loom. I'm going to separate these down. These yellow sections here are actually to do with the airbags, so we don't need those, they're going to come out. We'll also remove the ABS sensor wiring out there and the stereo wiring in here and all sorts of stuff, again being a luxury car, so that's all going to be removed, don't need any of that. We want to whittle it down to basically the fuel pump and fuel gauge bits and pieces and the tail lights, and that's really all we need in the back of the car. So I would think that probably at least half of this won't be used. With the wiring loom in the car of sorts and kind of sorted out, we're not able to really go any further now until we get this seat rail system sorted out, because obviously wiring looms and brake lines and things are going to run very close to that. So next stage is to remove these factory cross members. It's not the easiest or most fun job, but anyway, that's one of them cut out, and I have to tidy all that up, get all that cleaned up. There's a couple of places where it's torn, and there's a bit more to get out. Get both of these out, and then we can get on with welding the new seat rails or cross members in there that need to go in to meet the standards to allow us to bolt race seats in. Okay, so a few hours of work in terms of preparation, and it's all sorted. Reinforcing plates are welded in, and the cross member area, or the old factory cross member, has been removed, so it's all been tidied up. This will be ready for the new seat bars that we need to weld in across here. So that's the next step once we get this all marked out. Something else that we have also done is this welding here that you can see. Now, we have talked about it on the channel a few times, and it's a question that comes up quite regularly actually. Why do we do this kind of welding? Now, this is called seam welding, and basically what it is a stitch weld along the seams of factory panels or factory metal parts in the car. Generally speaking, seam welding is done where there are structural parts in the car, and it's done because from factory the cars are generally spot welded together, as you can probably see with these spots here. And modern cars are a little bit stronger, they use better spot welds and more of them. However, they're not a full stitch, it's just, as it says, a spot. And what can happen is with the twisting and flexing of the car, the chassis, and say around suspension mounting points and things like that, that twisting and flexing can cause too much movement. So say like in suspension, so the suspension may not do exactly what we need it to do, and also it can split those spot welds or pop them, which can lead to failures in critical components. So the rule of thumb with gravel rally cars is to seam weld them. You don't do complete welding the entire length of the seam. You do them in a stitch every so often, every 30 mil, and then leave a gap, and then 30 mil thereabouts. And what that allows is some flexing in the panel. If it's fully welded, there's a chance it can crack. However, it is stronger than the spot welding. A few hours later, and the rear seat tubes are welded in. It is a very time-consuming job. There's a lot of work involved in it, really just to put two tubes in. By the time you get everything cut and measured and set up and then welded in, there's a lot of work. Particularly in cars, for some odd reason, most cars the seat mounting points are all at different heights and different offsets, sometimes depending on the car, which makes it quite difficult when you're trying to put something square in and even measure it up and get it all in there. We've got a few ways that we get around that or work through that, and I'm sure there's plenty of videos online and on YouTube that will show you how to do that if you ever need to do it. It's just very, very time consuming. Anyway, they're welded in and done. What we will need to do is put a bead of sealant around all of these welds. We do that because there's probably going to be a pinhole or two here and there in the welds. That just happens. And when you run through a muddy puddle or water or something, that can be forced through those tiny little holes. So we'll seal that up on the inside of the car before it's all painted, and then underneath we'll also spray that with underbody sealant as well to make sure that that is well sealed. Now, the next little conundrum that we need to overcome, which is going to take a little bit of mucking around, is to do with the fuel pump. So in the earlier WRXs, GCs and GDs, the fuel pump just has like a metal hatch with a shoe underneath it, and the fuel pump hangs on it. We've showed the upgrades of those on several occasions. It's a fairly straightforward job. However, in terms of the Liberty and some of the later WRXs, so everything after GD, so the GH hatchback type cars, it goes to show that the focus had shifted away from rallying in terms of the production bits and pieces, and instead they had a plastic pot and inside was a fuel filter, and the fuel pump sits inside that, and it's housed in the tank, which is great for a road car. However, for a rally car, that, as far as we're concerned, is a drama. This section here around the outside actually is the fuel filter, and it has like a paper or fibre type medium in there for filtration. And being that it sits inside the fuel tank, it is common to get dust inside the fuel tank, particularly with rally cars here in WA, and that dust can be sucked up through the sock or the fine strainer that you can see there in the fuel tank, and then deposited it into the fuel filter. And we do not want a situation where we need to take the fuel pump or the fuel tank apart in a rally because we've got a blocked fuel filter. So we want to go to an external fuel filter that will be mounted under the bonnet. Before we get on to opening this box of goodies, I think I know what's inside there. Let's talk about the power steering lines, or rather the bits and pieces of them that are left. Now, all of these bits and pieces are where we've actually cut the steering lines apart. The reason being is that we want the hardline ends that go into the rack, and we didn't need the rest of the hoses. So these flexible bits and all of these cut off bits and pieces can all go in the bin. However, we do need this for the return line. It's kind of like an air conditioning fitting. We'll reuse that and put a new flexible short section of rubber return hose on that. We will use a braided line for some of it, and the rest of this can go to junk. So, what is this? This is a billet fuel pump housing to suit the Subaru fuel tank. It fits the 08 to I think 21 WRX, 04 to whatever it is, Liberty, and several models of Forester as well. And this is specifically designed to be able to utilise a high pressure fuel pump in there. We're going to use a Walbro or a TI Performance pump in there, which is our go-to pumps. However, it does not contain a fuel filter. So instead of having the plastic housing with the fuel filter surrounding the pump, this is purely just a housing for fuel pumps. Now, it is designed that you can run dual pumps in there. However, we're going to run a single pump in there. It is designed as a direct bolt-on replacement. This one's made by Radium Engineering. There's a couple of different brands on the market. We've chosen to go with this one. And effectively on the top here you've got for the pumps, it also has the level sensors in it, and fuel temperature sensors as well if you're using the factory plumbing in the car, and also it's got the fittings to be able to plug into the factory fuel lines if you are reusing those. We're not. So these actually have AN or dash fittings in here. So we're going to unscrew those, take those out and put the dash adapters in it so that we can run our braided fuel lines directly onto this pump, and we will be able to then run an external fuel filter which will end up in the engine bay. So good news, that has arrived. That came quite quickly, within a couple of days. A whole bunch of instructions and bits and pieces to wire that all up, and some hose clamps and fittings in there. Great. That's good that they have supplied all that. We did specify what pumps they were using, so hopefully this has got everything in it we need for the TI or the Walbro pump. Back onto making power steering lines. I had to stop yesterday afternoon, got an urgent phone call from a family member. There was a bushfire within a couple of kilometres of their property, and had to get along there and get a fire unit ready to go just in case we had to defend the property. Thankfully it worked out okay, and the fireys did an amazing job and got it all under control, and the weather wasn't too hot, and it wasn't a howling gale, otherwise that would have made it very difficult to get that fire under control. Anyway, back to power steering lines. So this morning I have made up these lines already to the steering rack, and I've just got the final touch to do to connect this one up to the power steering cooler line here. This has got like an aircon type fitting on it. Could have made up something different, but the quickest and easiest way, and what we would normally do with say the GCs, is we usually used a barb fitting on the end of the braided lines and then a short section of rubber hose with a couple of clamps to hook it up. So it'll be the same deal with this one, and all the way up to the power steering pump with our normal fittings and banjo fitting in there, and that will be the power steering lines under control. There's a couple of hours of my life that I'm not going to get back. Don't you love it when you buy a kit that is supposed to be plug and play, everything is correct for the vehicle, and then you get the kit and it's not? Well, that was kind of the case with this fuel pump kit. I haven't filmed it all putting it together. There's been a lot of putting it together and pulling it apart again to get things right in there. Turns out there were some pieces missing in the kit, which is always handy, and I don't know why that is. The instructions also, I had to go online to find those because they're not included in the kit. They basically send you a little link, and you get in there to download it. However, the instructions are not quite correct. It's supposed to fit all models of Subaru, including the 05 Liberty GT, or B4 as we know it. And look, the pump side of things is no big drama. That seems to go together okay. We've got a bit of mucking around to do on the top. We'll get to that when we fit the fuel lines, and they are customizable to allow for that, so that's great. However, the fuel level sender, that is a completely other story. You'd think that it would go straight on, and it certainly looked like it with the slots that were cut in it and things like that. However, it does not. For the later model FA engines, there is a different adapter for it, and I looked at that to see if that would be the correct one, which is sold separately as they are. However, that doesn't fit either. So in the end I had to cut part of the old fuel pump mount out of the old OEM system, and then fit that up so that it picked up the 2 bolt holes in the radium collector just to get the fuel level sender to go in. Now, yeah, it's a rally car and we could have run without a fuel level sender, but it's not ideal. It's always handy to know roughly how much fuel's in the tank, so this will give us a rough indication. I did do a very quick test fit, just dropped it in the tank to make sure that where this sender sits here was going to be okay, because normally it sits on the back. However, there is clearance in front. So now it's a matter of getting this thing in the car and into the fuel tank, and finally that should be this part of the fuel system hopefully put to bed. Okay, excuse the wiring loom. that's just sitting here. That is the rear loom that's all been pulled out of the way while we were welding and putting the seat rails in. Got to get some convoluted tube over that. Yep, just waiting for that to arrive, and then we can get that sorted out. Right, the big news is the fuel hanger went in without any drama. So the pump is mounted in there now, and everything's sorted out, including the fuel level sender. Thankfully, that all went together fine, and it's bolted down good. Still got a bit of work to do just with the fuel lines and how we're going to run those. We're going to change these out to -6 fittings so that we can run our braided fuel lines to those, and we're going to work out how we're going to route those and get those plumbed in. That will happen at some stage in the near future. All right, anyway, if nothing else, that is one ticked off the list. Okay, there is still heaps and heaps of work left to do on this car. However, we are rapidly running out of time. The silly season is fast approaching. We've only got a matter of a few days left till the end of the year, and we really need to get as much as we can done. However, we also wanted to get a video out, so we'll call this one here, and we'll keep filming, and everything that doesn't make it into this one, we'll get it into the next video earlier in the new year. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed part 1 of our Legacy B4 build. Please give us a thumbs up. Look after yourselves and stay safe over the festive season and holidays, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers.